Ouch. My hands hurt so bad from punching him in the face.
Sean O'Malley isn't sure who the next challenger is for the UFC bantamweight title, but he firmly believes that the next time he steps into the Octagon, it'll be for the belt. The rising UFC star told ESPN that he sat down with UFC president Dana White and matchmaker Sean Shelby in Las Vegas recently. During the visit, O'Malley said he was told he would compete for the 135-pound gold in the next bout. O'Malley said he is targeting a return in July 2023. Stay with us till the end to know more. "I know my next fight is for the title," said O'Malley, who is prompting his new endorsement deal with Timex, the UFC official watch partner. O'Malley defeated former champion Peter Yan via split decision at UFC 280 last month, putting him in the top contender position in the bantamweight division. ESPN ranks him number 2 in the world at 135 pounds, just below reigning champion Aljamain Sterling. The question on O'Malley's mind now is whether or not Sterling will defend the title one more time before O'Malley gets his crack at the belt, possibly against former two-time champion Henry Cejudo. O'Malley said Monday that he began a grueling training camp knowing his next fight would likely come against Sterling, who has elite base, or Cejudo, a former Olympic wrestling gold medalist. In a recent interview with ESPN, Sterling said he wants O'Malley next because O'Malley represents the biggest fight. O'Malley said he doesn't care whether or not Sterling faces anyone else, but O'Malley said July means the most to him. Sterling is coming off a second-round TKO finish over former champion TJ Dillashaw last month at UFC 280. "I'm the biggest fight, obviously," O'Malley said. "It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. Whoever I'm fighting is going to be the biggest fight in the division. I don't know what to tell him." If O'Malley had his choice for a title fight, he said Cejudo would want to defeat Sterling to become the champion. "It's a better win, beating a two-time world champ, two-weight class Olympic gold medalist," O'Malley said. "If you leave it at that, which win looks better? A win against Elzo or a win against Henry? I like the win against Henry." The UFC returns to Florida this weekend for the first time since UFC 273 in April. UFC Fight Night takes place Saturday night at the Amway Center in Orlando, 7 Eastern on ESPN+, with an interesting card for fight fans to pursue. This will be the first UFC Fight Night event held outside the UFC Apex in Las Vegas since the promotion held its last in France in September. It's one of the 3 fight cards remaining in the calendar year. A welterweight main event between Stephen Thompson and Kevin Holland. Here are some thoughts, as well as a few other stories surrounding MMA, including Larissa Pacheco's upset with undefeated Kayla Harrison at the PFL World Championship on Friday. Khabib is a former UFC lightweight champion who finishes his career with 29 wins and no losses. He retired in 2020 as the undefeated and undisputed UFC lightweight champion. With wrestling as the foundation of his skills, Khabib moved in a commanding fashion to beat and destroy his opponents. His highlight reel is proof of that. Also, during his tenure in the UFC, he has destroyed some of the best fighters in the division, including Justin Gaethje, Dustin's pound-for-pound furious rival, Conor McGregor. Undoubtedly, the thought of being stuck inside the octagon with someone's eagle shape is a scary thought for anyone. Rising bantamweight contender Sean O'Malley has announced his stance on fighting the former pound-for-pound king. Sean O'Malley has a high-stake bout coming up against former UFC bantamweight champion Peter Yan in the coming months. O'Malley is sure if he can pull off the upset, a title shot awaits Sugar. In the episode of a podcast with comedian Theo Vaughn questioned which fighters would be on O'Malley's hit list to knock out, to which Sean O'Malley replied, "I'd knock out Cody for breakfast. Get my blood pumping. I'd probably knock out TJ after that. Just like a little brunch. Then I'd knock out Dominique, and then I'd knock Henry down on his knees while he was shooting. So it'd probably be that. We'll do 4 and maybe call Connor, just for fun. And then eat. No, not. Fuck that." Khabib recently praised The Sugar Show, noting that Dana White Contender Series alumni has all the skills and talent needed to succeed. Sean O'Malley's fight with Peter Yan will be the most important for the stacked bantamweight division, which could hand the winner a title shot. An interesting matchup to say the least. Everyone loses in MMA. Harrison is the latest example. Honestly, this one was not that shocking. It's a big upset, but anyone who followed the PFL this season knew Pacheco was potentially a problem. In my preview of the final, I said there were signs of potential upset, most notably Pacheco, hitting his prime, which was not the case in their first two fights. What happens with Harrison now will be interesting. Before the loss, Harrison made it clear she does not want to compete in the full season in 2023. She made marquee fights. That's still plausible, but the result has an impact. It's hard to envision 2023 in which she doesn't face Pacheco again. It just feels like that has to happen now. And this dream fight between Harrison and Bellator, MMA Chris Cyborg, was never a slam dunk to begin with. Even had Harrison won, there was no guarantee the two promotions would figure that fight out. Despite PFL's sincere efforts this far, everyone loves a comeback story, but what will Harrison's look like? If she's not fighting in the regular season and the PFL is unable to put together a cross-promotion fight, Harrison's 2023 is very much up in the air. This is an example of how important a single fight can be for setting a narrative. For Holland, the truth is, he's going to be fine, win or lose. Until he proves he can deal with high-level grappling, the reality is that we're not going to think of him as a legitimate title challenger. Not with wrestlers like Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Khamzat Chimaev, Gilbert Burns, etc. at welterweight as well. But that doesn't matter. Perhaps at some point a title will be part of Holland's appeal, but it doesn't need to be. He's been going the Cowboy Cerrone route of fighting very frequently in multiple weight classes, and it's working for him. These are all important fights, but the result means less for Holland's future. Thompson, meanwhile, is 2 months away from his 40th birthday, and coming off back-to-back losses, this will be the first and only appearance in 2022. Part of the reason for this inactivity this year is that he didn't want to fight another wrestler. He wanted a stylistic matchup that would allow him to breathe and use his striking, rather than one that would force him to defend takedowns the entire time. If he wins, he's still one win away from the top 5 material in the division and possibly a title shot. If he loses, the narrative will be inevitable turn to, how is Thompson's career going to end? Even though we're used to it, it's still amazing how much one fight can shape a fighter's future negotiations. Thompson is a supporter, and he's one of the quietest guys in the sport, so he'll handle the pressure just fine. But make no mistake, his 2023 and the entire career lookout are at stake. Brunson, 23-8, was supposed to face Jake Hermansson, 23-7, on the card, but he pulled out last week due to an injury. He recently told me that it's a hyperextended arm, and he's hopeful that it won't take too long. Before his last fight, a knockout loss to Jared Cannonier in February, Brunson, 38, said he wanted to fight 2 more times. Ideally, he wanted to beat Cannonier, then win the UFC title and retire. Asked him if that was still the case, seeing if his next fight would still be his last. He said the plan has been tweaked a bit, but he'll keep fighting. It's performance-based, Brunson said. Before my last fight, doctors told me I shouldn't run because of some tears on my knee, but I need to run for the cardio. Had I run for my previous fight, I would have been in better shape, and I would have won that fight because I was winning until I got caught. If I'm not performing well, that's a different story, but I feel I can still dominate if I'm in good shape. Brunson said he's hopeful the UFC will rebook his fight against Hermansson in 2023, probably as early as February. Hermansson is facing Roman Dolidze this weekend. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you up in the next video.